What's my first question from Fansville? Joe Tesner says, will Alabama go undefeated this season? That's a good question. You know what? They've only done it a couple of times under Nick Saban. But this year, I wouldn't put it past them. First, I always look at the division. So is it going to be easier to get out of the division undefeated? And actually, when you look at the SEC West, it's not great this year as opposed to what it has been in the past, in particular with A&M struggling to the degree that they're struggling. I think that the second best team is probably Ole Miss. We'll see what LSU develops into, but they can easily sweep the SEC West. So then it becomes, can you beat Georgia most likely in the SEC championship game and then get through the playoff? That remains to be seen, and I think it all has to do with the health of their quarterback, Bryce Young. If he can get back, if he can be healthy, if he can stay on the field, then they've got a great chance to go undefeated, because I still think that's probably the best team in the country, and in particular because of how good their defense is. So, Joe, yeah, there's a good chance Bama goes undefeated. Okay, next question. This comes in from Clark Van, Lyshoot? He says, how can Ohio State exploit Michigan State's defense? Show up, because not difficult to exploit Michigan State's defense. In fact, Ohio State, if you look at what they did to the Spartans last year, it was an absolute boat race. Now, granted, that one was in the shoe, but it's not like this Michigan State defense is much better. In fact, when you look at what this defense was a year ago, they were 130th in pass defense, but that was after Ohio State took them to the shed. That's right, that shed that Mel Tucker always talks about. They're coming into this game with the 115th ranked pass defense. That ain't good. So Ohio State, if you resemble yourself at all on Saturday, you'll be able to exploit this defense, which has not stopped anybody. The problem for Michigan State is that they don't have an offense that can overcome like they did a year ago. Last year, they had Kenneth Walker, and that run game and his ability allowed them to overcome some of those games in which they were giving up a lot of points. They don't have that this year. That's why they're in trouble. Michigan State is in trouble. The difference between Nebraska last year and Michigan State was not that far on the field. Remember, Nebraska held Michigan State without a first down in the second half. And yet one of those teams was, 3-9. The other one was 11-2. And so you're seeing that flux right now in that transition because Michigan State doesn't have it. Ohio State will be able to exploit that defense by showing up. Michigan State cannot overcome it with their offense, which has scored 7 and 13, somewhat respectively, in each of the last 2 weeks. So there you go. Show up, Ohio State. Next question. We go out to NNB Sports, and it says, do you think there could be another year with Texas and OU not playing for the Big 12 championship? Yeah, I think that there could be, and in all reality, that might even be likely right now in NB Sports. I look at this Big 12, and you look at the standings right now, and yeah, Texas is sitting there with just one loss, but then you look at what else is going on. Kansas, undefeated in conference. Kansas State, undefeated in conference. Oklahoma State, undefeated in conference. TCU, undefeated in conference. Tech and Baylor, each with only a loss in conference. I mean, let's just from the OU perspective, I don't see how OU digs out of this and goes back to the Big 12 championship game. Even if they were to win out, Kansas State is undefeated in conference, which means Kansas State would have to lose 3 conference games. They're essentially 3 games behind Kansas State because they would lose the direct tiebreaker, having lost to Kansas State in Norman a week ago. So this is going to be very – there is a really good chance Oklahoma is not there. And then Texas, they have a loss. They would lose the tiebreaker to Texas Tech, and they've got some tough opponents coming up. Now, I do think that Texas can overcome to a much greater degree than Oklahoma can here down the stretch in the Big 12, but we are looking at another year in which we're likely to see a Big 12 championship game with neither Texas or Oklahoma. Remember, this is one of the rare years that we're getting a Red River game like we are this week with both of those teams unranked. If I had to handicap it right now, I think the team that I would say is most likely to be in that Big 12 championship game is Oklahoma State. They've got the track record. They've got the quarterback. He's a veteran, and Spencer Sanders. And then the next team is probably TCU. If I'm handicapping it right now, I think it's going to be Oklahoma State versus TCU in that Big 12 championship game. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here. College football on Fox.